Welcome back into the Lions247 Podcast. We have a lot to break down on this episode before a very eventful weekend in Happy Valley. We are going to be back on the camp circuit here in town, which is always a nice thing, just a few minutes away from each of our respective homes. And except for Tyler Calvaruso, who's making the trip from New Jersey, we appreciate him for that. But we will be back on Sunday morning into the afternoon, monitoring Penn State's latest prospect camp. It's going to be a weekly basis for us, but we're excited to do that. Look for a full photo gallery at lions247.com and plenty of commentary and live updates over on the site. We also have a lot of official visits to monitor over the course of this upcoming weekend. It's the floodgates opening for the next few weeks, with Penn State welcoming top 2025 targets to campus for these really important 48-hour stays on campus that are going to lead to some decisions later on in the summer. We'll have Tyler Calvaruso to break all that and more down with us right here on this episode of the Lions247 Podcast. But this is also a weekend in which more Penn State freshmen will show up to campus and get ready to get underway with their academic and athletic careers here as Nittany Lions. And among them is Donnie Harbour, an offensive lineman from Waukesha, Wisconsin, standout performer up there at Catholic Memorial. And we're going to get a chance to speak with him. He's one of two players from that program making the move to Penn State this weekend. We're going to focus on him for a while, then we'll get to his teammate a little bit later. And we'll break down this entire group of freshmen making their move to campus with Tyler Calvaruso. But first, we bring him on board, Donnie Harbour, about 6 months removed from signing with this class officially last December. I know you have probably been waiting for this week to arrive. It is here. Thank you for making some time for us during this really busy few days.
Oh, yeah, of course. I'm just happy to be on here.
I mean, you've been seeing other guys get to campus. I know Cooper Cousins, Egan Boyer, Garrett Sexton back in January. They got to get their feet wet a little bit. Caleb Brewer was the fourth offensive lineman on campus. He got to town in May, and now you're following them. You're going to complete this offensive line class. You're the fifth component. What is on your to-do list, though, before you actually get to town? We're recording here on a Wednesday evening. You told me Sundays when you're getting in the car, or Saturdays when you're getting in the car and coming to Happy Valley.
What's on my to-do list? Just have fun with my friends before I leave. Just get mentally prepared. Get mentally prepared to leave my mom and all my family members back in Wisconsin.
What does that look like? I mean, mentally preparing to leave mom. I think everyone can try to do that. I know I tried to do that. I'm sure when I went to college, but then you get to college and mom's not there. And there's a lot of things that you maybe took for granted or that you kind of just expected to be taken care of. What are you going to have to pick up the slack on? And what did mom really make sure was always there for you during the course of your high school career and even before then?
Just making me stay focused and all aspects of high school through middle school and elementary, just getting on me about my work and everything. And now I just feel like I have to do it on my own. So I've been cooperating with that very well. I've been doing stuff on my own lately. I've been calling people, interacting with others just by myself. Some stuff that I wouldn't do before without my mom.
Can you cook yet?
Yeah, I've been cooking since I was 12.
Oh, then you're way ahead of the curve from a lot of your classmates. Trust me on that. That's a big. Can you do laundry? You know your way around a washer and a dryer? Yeah, then you're in good shape. That you got the starters kit for the freshmen. I think you're going to be in a good spot. Now, Donnie, when it comes to physical preparation, you know what you're getting into. This is big man football, Big Ten football ahead of you, Power 4 action. What have you been doing physically to prepare yourself for hitting the practice field in a matter of 2 months?
Yeah, I've been with my trainer, Johnny Bridgewater. He's been getting me right. He's trained a lot of key athletes like Braylon Allen himself, and he's just getting me physically prepared for this outcome I'm about to face in a week.
Now, Penn State, when they announced you on signing day, listed you at 6'3", 315 pounds. Are you still in that ballpark? Has there been some development one way or the other?
I'm still around that ballpark. Still the same as when they announced me.
And when you get to campus, is your expectation there's going to be a bit of a breakdown phase where you're going to have to shed some weight and then build up again? Or do you feel like you're coming right around where they might want you to show up?
I think I'm going to have to shed a little bit more, but I feel like I'm right around that area that they need me to be.
I know you've taken, a lot of focus in that direction and trying to make sure you're prepared. Can you tell us a little bit about how you've gone about maybe strengthening that part of your skill set and maybe making sure you're in control of the weight and treating it the right way?
I don't know. I've just been like eating well lately. Just not like overdoing everything. Been conditioning, strength, doing all that. Just not overboard like other people would do. Just taking care of my body before I get down there, so like I can physically give them a good part of me before anything else.
Is there feedback that's been helpful from some of the other offensive linemen, perhaps before you've gotten to campus? I know you're hearing from the coaching staff up there on a consistent basis, but those are your guys. I know you were kind of building up to this moment. They got a little bit of a head start. Have they gotten some word back to you on what to expect, what to show up with, anything like that?
Oh yeah, they just said stay focused, be on your A game at all points because you never know what's gonna happen.
What would you say about this offensive line group? I know I personally got a pretty good look at all five of you last year because you were on campus for summer work, and a bunch of you were actually on camp together one time. I think all five of you, which was a great helpful thing for us. But what do you think you bring to that room for Coach Stratwine? You've all got different skill sets. Egan Boyer, I think, was listed at 6'8", 250 pounds on signing day. You've got Cooper Cousins, who shows up looking like he's 24 years old. Everybody's a little bit different. Some different skill sets sprinkled in there. What do you think it means for the program?
I think it's beautiful, like because of all of our different skill sets and mindsets. That like once we come together, we can use like all five of our minds together. As we say, 5R1, we can't do anything without the fifth alignment. I feel like we'll be great in the future. I wouldn't say about this year. I feel like we're just learning this year. This is one of our learning and experiencing years, and we have to like catch up with the older guys and stuff like that. But I feel like in the future we'll be amazing.
I love that you bring that up because I'm sure for as long as you can just about remember in football, when football season comes, you're one of the big dogs on the roster, and you're a guy who's going to play a bunch, and you're a guy who the opponent's probably going to know about by the end of the game. Whereas I can hear in the way you kind of laid out your vision for your freshman year is there's going to be development, there's going to be learning, there's not maybe going to be a lot of action in games. So how do you kind of mentally prepare for the step back when it comes to game days, but a step forward when it becomes a student of the game?
I think it just all classifies as like you have to be humble, you have to stay humble, you have to stay hungry as well. You can't go out there and just like feel like you're the man on campus. You have to fall back a little bit and learn stuff from the older guys, and just like progress and keep striving to get better. Because if you just go in there thinking you're the top dog, like somebody's gonna hush you up, bro. You just
That is
gotta,
for sure.
yeah, just
Well,
gotta go in there with the right mindset.
We heard that Cooper Cousins definitely went in with the right mindset. He had the right physical tools as well. And he's put himself in a situation that is very rare here to hear about a freshman firmly in the mix for a two-deep role on the offensive line, especially because this offensive line isn't lacking for talent, isn't lacking for experience, really. And so that says a lot about Cooper. You got to know him a bit last summer. I'm sure you've gotten to know him a bit since you committed last April. What did you make of that early feedback coming out of campus here about Cooper and the fact that he has put himself in a spot to maybe chase some significant game reps as a true freshman?
Man, I'm proud of that guy, man. Like, actually, we talk every now and then. Like, I'll text him all that because, man, we've really grown together. Like, that's really like my brother. We're really like family. We've grown closer together. But I'm proud of him. He's the hardest worker there. Like, he'd work harder than anybody like that I know of, and I'm just proud to see him. Like, he's putting stuff out of his mindset, like bad stuff. Like, he's giving the coaches all he got.
Is this something you kind of could have forecasted, perhaps, just working with him in summer camp last year? I mean, was there something a little bit different about him when you went through those hours of camp work on those hot days last June, last July?
No, I knew he was gonna be like this. Even when we were at camp, he was just like a dog, striving to get reps and everything. And I just knew he was gonna be like this.
No, Cooper is a guy that we've been told could factor in all three roles in the interior. Right guard, we saw him start there during the blue-white game. Left guard get work there. Center certainly trying to push Nick Dawkins, the fifth-year senior. We know that the interior is also where we've had you pegged. What is your anticipation for maybe your initial landing spot, or are you going to be doing some cross training? Is center in play at all for you?
I just know I can play all. I just want to go in there with the mindset that I can play all. I've been practicing all. I've been snapping, all type of stuff.
That's what I was going to ask. I mean, what kind of experience do you have snapping the football?
I used to do it back in Little League, not really high school, but hey, if they need me to do it, I can do it. That's just the mindset I'm gonna have.
How would you describe the guard that you ultimately became, the college guard prospect that you ultimately became during your career at Catholic Memorial? I believe you were a 3-time first-team All-State selection, so you've solidified yourself early on as an underclassman among the premier players in the state of Wisconsin, and the Power 5 offers flowed in for you. But how would you describe what you became at that level?
I feel like I was good in high school, but I feel like I could have improved. Like I can improve anytime. Like every day you can improve. And I just feel like I was good, but now I want to be better. Like I'm not even thinking about the past. I'm thinking about now, and like I feel like I could be better now.
What's an area of the game that you think can specifically, if you can work and work and work at it here in year one, it's going to set you up for a really successful future in football?
Oh, the speed of my feet, of course. The speed of my feet, and my punches. Once I get that down, I feel like I'll be amazing, and I can still strive.
And then on the other side of it, what is an aspect of your game right now that you already feel you can lean on it? Like it's something that's very foundational for you. It's in place, and it's something that you'll be able to carry with you.
I feel like my feet are good because in pass pro, I feel like I can do a lot in pass pro that I couldn't before.
Have people always been a little bit surprised by how fast you move at your size?
Yeah.
Have you always been one of the bigger guys, around the playground, around the basketball court, no matter what? Have you always been a bigger kid?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you've always been able to kind of have those quick, stuttery feet and some burst to you.
Yeah.
And so has that translated? Are there other sports that you've opened some eyes on other than being an offensive lineman? Because when we see a 6'3", 315-pound guy, you can see offensive lineman. That's not hard to do. Are there some stuff you've done in the world of athletics that maybe would surprise folks for an incoming college offensive lineman?
I could play basketball. um, I do track and field.
Okay.
I'm a 2-time state contender for field, and that's really it.
And that's versatility. And you're short selling yourself. You finished 6th in the entire state in 2023 for shot put, according to your profile here. So I knew the answer. I just wanted to give you a chance to let us know it. And I know that Javen Williams, currently competing at left tackle, is someone who had a really strong history in the field circuit during his high school career. How do you think that plays into playing the offensive line position, from the torque and maybe the balance and all that stuff that goes into shot put?
Oh, well, you have to have a fast twitch to do shot put and discus. Like the fast twitch comes from football. So once you get that explosion off, then like you can throw you can throw a shot put really far. It just comes from fast twitch, and like you have to have mobility to be able to spin like that and everything. And just it contributes to football and track.
Now you've got this 2-month gap before you actually get on the field in a padded practice situation for Penn State. What is the most important things directly in front of your face? I know there's probably a lot of urgency in your head to start looking ahead to August, but you can't let yourself do that quite yet. So what do you need to accomplish these 8 weeks ahead of you?
Just getting better, stronger, faster, mentally prepared with the plays and everything. Just get into that mindset to where I can do it now.
How much has already been thrown your way from the playbook standpoint? I know Penn State staff isn't waiting until June to get you informed. So how long has that process extended back, and what exactly have you been able to get done from Wisconsin before you've got here into a new home?
I've been learning the playbook a little bit. Just a little, like some of the basics and stuff, not more of the extreme to where I have to go out in the field and do it and stuff like that. And just it's been amazing. Like I've gotten some of the plays down, particularly the basic ones. I just feel like it was like I can do it. I can go out there and do it in front of the coaches. but I still need a little bit more work on
I was always told the best way to learn the playbook correctly is to find the guy at your position who knows the playbook best and
it.
ask him to guide you a little bit. Now, I don't know if you know who that is yet. You might have to get to campus and tap on some shoulders, but do you have any built-in relationships with guys who are already there aside from the freshman class that you might be able to tap in right away? Or is that going to be just kind of a feel it out freshman process for you?
Javen Cooper, of course, Nick Dawkins, Vega. Um, they're pretty. We're pretty close. Like Vega was my official visit person, so I got to connect with him a little more. And Javen was there at his house as well.
You bring up Venga, and he's a guy that we've seen him snap the ball a bit, but guard has been his primary focus, and he stepped up last year, played a ton, looking like he's going to be potentially in a starting role from game one this year. But he's also someone that we've heard is stepping up as a leadership kind of role because they lost 3 starters last year, veteran guys. You spent some time with him. I know it wasn't like a week-long trip, but it was a weekend on an official visit. You probably got to pick his personality a little bit. What did you learn about him? Because we're still kind of learning about Venga from a media standpoint because his star is starting to rise here at Penn State.
Uh, he's a different guy from when he's on the field. Like on the field, he's vicious, like strong, but like when he's off the field, he's a pretty cool guy. Like he's nice. He'll ask you what you need and stuff like that. He's just like a supporter, a big brother.
And you also have a built-in support within your class, within the guys coming this weekend, because Corey Smith and you go way back. You've done a lot of damage leading blocking for him, and he's had a lot of damage running behind those blocks. And he's a guy that's coming to Penn State, joining a very competitive running back room. We'll talk about him a little bit more when we break down this unit with Tyler Calvaruso. But here, talking with you, give us the scouting report. How did Corey Smith develop during his time at Catholic Memorial, and what is Penn State bringing into that run?
First of all, they're bringing a dog. Like Corey's underrated. He's that guy. Once he gets that spark, he's gone. Um, from sophomore year to senior year, he had a little struggle senior year. He had an injury in his collarbone, which held him back a little bit. But as soon as he got to play, touchdown, yards after yards. He's just explosive. He's that guy that you would want on your team. He's that guy you should be like studying for before the game. Like he can do it all. He can play receiver, running back, a little bit of quarterback, but he's just that guy.
I know he went back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons before he was roughed up a little bit with that injury. And you mentioned he wasn't able to play, I think, for basically the 2 months stretch of the season, much of the regular season. But then he put up big numbers in the playoffs. What did it mean to see him get back there late stretch and have some performances that really showed what he's about? How do you think that helped him heading into enrollment year versus, let's say, he missed the rest of the season, didn't have a chance to get back on the field, and now he's got to regain his confidence on a college campus?
It pretty much gave him a confidence boost because he was down and about because he couldn't get on the field and stuff like that. But as soon as he got on the field, he just seen him spark, like happy all the time. Just that one of those type of kids. Like um, he was happy to get on the field. Like man, I was happy to see him on the field. I was excited for him.
Tell me about the competitor here, because anyone who's willing to join Quentin Martin in a class and form a tandem with somebody like that, and then follow to campus the Nick Singleton, Katron Allen show, and now you got Messiah Mickens, who could be a 5-star coming in the next class. There's always somebody that Jaywan Slider is going to bring in to beat you for that job. There's always going to be competition. What is he like a competitor? Because I know a non-competitor is not showing up here to this particular position room. So can you give us maybe some stories or some examples of why this guy is built for this kind of a situation?
Man, Corey, most competitive guy I've ever met. Like we've did drills during OTAs at CMH, and he just like you wouldn't get past him. Like he'll break through your tackles and everything, and then he'll just start talking. He'll get in your head. He gets in your head a lot. He's just one of those guys that I try to get in your head the most. Like, man, he's the most competitive guy I've ever seen.
Now, are you a talker in the trenches, or are you more of a psychological warfare person?
Nah, I don't talk. I just play.
There you go. And tell me a little bit about the guy you're gonna be spending a lot of time with. In fact, I'll ask about both of them, Frank Leonard and Phil Trautwein. You got to know them a little bit better from an instructional standpoint. I think probably working on the field with them last year, but I know the communication's been like that. Frank, an older guy, has been around the program a few years, a shouter. What are your memories of Frank in the camp circuit, and what do you think he does for the offensive line before we get to Phil?
Uh, Coach Frank, man, during camp he was just yelling at us. But I knew it wasn't just to yell at us; it was to get us better. Like Coach Frank isn't just the guy to yell at you for like just any reason. He's gonna yell at you to get better. Like he wants to see everyone get better. That's just the person he is.
And then how about Coach Trautwein? Because when we see him on the camp circuit, it's more, kind of just quietly engaged, laying out what he wants you to do, not a lot of hollering. I know that changes in the thick of the season when he's working with you guys, and you'll experience a different side of Phil Trautwein. There's no doubt about it in the next few months. But what did you kind of make of his coaching technique?
He's just a guy that he'd work on your technique with you, like fix your step and everything. Like he'd get you right without yelling. He's just the guy. He'd walk up to you and tell you what you need to fix and do better at.
And he spent so much time since he got to campus during COVID, trying to form this culture, culture that can kind of collectively year after year show up to the table and be a high-level offensive line unit and accountable. And we're going to see a big test this year. When you lose an All-American like Olu and a third-round pick in Caden Wallace and then a fifth-round pick in Hunter Norzad, there's shoes to fill. What have you picked up, or what's the message maybe you've received about this particular Penn State offensive line culture, why it can work, why it's sustainable, and why you're buying in?
I feel like those vets left like a key piece to the young guys that they were training all these years. Like the guys that have to step up now because they left have learned from those particular people. And I feel like they are going to come out and dominate every step of the way this year.
Two more questions for you. I'm curious, beyond the football, which is going to be a pretty significant part of what you do here on campus, what are your other ambitions? What else would you like to pursue here in Happy Valley? Do you have particular academic goals in mind? Do you want to get any hobbies going here? Is there anything else beyond sports, beyond football that you kind of want to be able to get into?
Yeah, I want to get into like different type of like fraternity. I want to go into a fraternity, and I want to do sports medicine.
Sports medicine. You're going to have a lot of networking opportunities within that building there, just right in their own regard. And then my last, it isn't really a question. It's just going to hand the mic over to you. You're one of the last members of this freshman class we'll get a chance to speak with before you guys all are settled on campus and getting to work. And we wish you well. But what do you think is the overall message you'd like to put out there to listeners, maybe across the globe, about what this freshman class represents and what you all hope to accomplish together in these years to come?
Oh, we're different. We're a different class. Like any other class that came through, we're different. And we're together. We're with each other. We text each other all the time. There's no problem needed. I can't wait to get down there to be with my family, because they're not just my friends anymore; they're family. And we're gonna come this year. We're gonna come next year, and we're gonna come the year after that.
The class of 2024, ready to make their impact at Penn State. Donnie Harbor among them. Donnie, really appreciate the time. Wishing you well. Safe travels getting down here. And next time we talk to you, it'll be right here on campus in Happy Valley.
All right. Thank you.
The Lions247 Podcast continues with Tyler Calvaruso. We're going to get a lot of commentary from him on this upcoming group of freshman arrivals. Donnie Harbor obviously gave us a great summary of what he's experiencing, but he's one of three that we have confirmed will be here this weekend, getting underway with their experience, along with the aforementioned Corey Smith from his same high school in Wisconsin. And additionally, DeJuan Lane, a top 24/7 safety prospect out of Baltimore, to help us get a little more insight on that group and looking back at their high school careers and recruitment processes. We bring in Tyler Calvaruso, as I mentioned. And Tyler, it's always a very proud day for these families and for these young men when they can make that move to campus. There's obviously some anxiety, maybe some butterflies in the stomach, but it's ultimately the realization of a long-term goal. And you've gotten to know these guys a little bit in different ways during their high school careers and during their recruitment processes with Penn State, which in some cases span years. And let's begin with Donnie Harbour, who we just heard from. And what do you make of him rounding out this offensive line class?
I mean, first off, just listen to him speak, you could kind of sense the achievement of getting to the next level, getting ready to go to your school. I think it's definitely something that means a whole lot to him, and he's really happy to be part of this Penn State group and heading to State College. He is one of the more interesting prospects in the class, kind of going back to last spring when he first committed. He was one of those guys who kind of flew under the radar a little bit as a top target, but he was a top target for Phil Trotwell really for an extended period of time on the interior. And there's been a lot of talk about, his physical development and, shedding some maybe bad weight or some baby fat that he still has left on him. And Donnie Harbour has been really hard at work, kind of jump-starting that physical transformation ahead of his arrival on campus. There's a lot of clay for Chuck Losey to work with here. And I think that given Harbour's work ethic and what he's already been able to accomplish in the weight room, the way that he's been getting at the conclusion of a solid senior season, I think you got to like where he's heading in his development. And this is a prospect, as is the case with the rest of the class, that Penn State is excited to get to town, get to work with, and see what it ultimately has on its hands. But again, you feel the sense of achievement here from Harbour. He knows he's gearing up for the next chapter, and he's pretty excited about it. Penn State's just as excited to have him around.
And as he broke down, there is a lot of compelling aspects to this offensive line class. The 5 men who have now shown up to campus, and as he rounds out that group, and what it could mean for the future, what it could mean for Phil Troutwine. There's a lot of really interesting prospect profiles that are different from one another there. We talk about that mixing and matching and the element of competition for Jaywan Sider in the running back room, and got a newcomer there in Corey Smith. And we just heard a firsthand account of what it was like to see Corey Smith compete, work his way back from an injury that he suffered as a senior. And really a lot of glowing reports from Donnie Harbour, as you'd expect. What did you see from Corey Smith? We got a few looks at him on the camp circuit. He's also someone who put together quite a bit of film during his high school career, a couple back-to-back 1,000-yard campaigns, and was on the radar for a lot of Power 4 programs.
Different kind of back than what Penn State currently has in its room. I think if you were to compare him to a back in Penn State's depth chart right now, this probably isn't even the best comparison, but it's Cam Wallace, just because he's more of a scat back, a guy who's, one jump cut kind of guy. He can make plays in the passing game. He has good hands. Central Catholic Memorial, they would utilize Smith in a way to get him to the edge on jet sweeps and make the most of his speed when he was healthy. So I think there's a little bit different of an element to his game, especially when you stack him up against the other back in this class, Quentin Martin, who also obviously has that pass catching ability going back to his high school career where he would split out wide for Bell Vernon and make plays with his hands. Smith is very adept at doing the same exact thing out of the backfield with his skill set. So I think that anytime you could bring in a prospect like Smith who brings a little bit of a different flavor to the room, it helps to diversify your depth chart. I think it helps given the fact that Penn State, odds are, there are going to be some departures in the running back room following the 2024 season if all goes well. Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, they have their sights set on playing at the next level at some point. And bring in the guy like Smith to pair with Quentin Martin, it gives you a solid running back duo to build on in the 2024 class. You add him in with Cam Wallace, and then, of course, the 2025 group that Penn State has coming in with 3 backs on board. I think the room remains in good shape under Jaywan Sider's watch, and landing guys like Smith and getting them to campus and getting them enrolled is a big reason why.
We'll see what comes from that 2025 class. Could be, right now it's a 3-man group.
Long way to go.
3-man group right now. Whether it ends up as a 3-man group and who those 3 guys are, we're not quite sure yet. There's some intrigue in that as guys are checking out other campuses. Things are happening there. We'll keep tabs. But just talking about right now in 2024, what's at stake, I keep hammering this home. You addressed it. It's the elephant in the room for the running back room. The fact that Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, it's not they're not halfway through their college career right now. The anticipation is after 2 seasons, as long as they're healthy, they're going to get a chance to rumble and they're going to go to the NFL because the running back has such a short shelf life. We see these guys have to scrape and claw to get second contracts at the NFL. It's the nature of the business. And this is one position where even if a guy doesn't go and have tremendously explosive Heisman campaign type of numbers as a junior, you completely understand and tip your cap to him when he moves on to the NFL after his junior year. So with that said, not only is Corey Smith entering a competition, and he's got some catching up to do because Cam Wallace had a very good spring, and when healthy, Quentin Martin was able to prove some things during the spring. But this is a conversation not just for the number 3 running back job right now. We don't know how big that job will be. Trey Potts wasn't really a featured component of the offense much last year. But what that is going to be at stake next spring for whoever does emerge as the running back 3, they're going to be in the driver's seat to be a starting caliber running back, whether it's a co-starter committee thing or not. So Corey Smith gets an opportunity to come to campus, compete. We saw him go side by side with Quentin Martin. I think both of these guys showed in the camp scene and with their high school film that they're exceptional receivers at this position. And that's going to give you a little bit of bona fides working your way into an offense that's going to reward that kind of versatility from any position. And so I think that what you're going to wonder with Corey Smith, because I think his physical frame, there's work to do. Can he take on an Abdul Carter? Can he take on a Kobe King and protect his quarterback? Because until you can do that, this coaching staff is going to say, take a seat on Saturdays. That's just the way it is. So I think that's going to be important. But London Montgomery exits this room. Corey Smith enters this room. And now it's going to be set in terms of what this competition battle is going to be look like. You've got walk-ons who are going to be involved in practices as well, but going to be compelling to follow what happens beyond Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. Third name to get to is someone I know you've been high on for a long time. Beyond those teammates coming in from Wisconsin, we've got to look down to Baltimore. DeJuan Lane confirmed with us this week that he will also be making the move up to Happy Valley. Big, long safety prospect, and he really showed the speed when given the opportunity to do that at the prep level too, to kind of verify why he's sticking at safety at this level and not maybe graduating up to linebacker. What do you love about DeJuan Lane, and what do you think he brings to a safety room that isn't lacking for talent?
I think he's one of the more underrated prospects in this class. And for me, the speed is one of the bigger reasons why. If you look at DeJuan Lane's track numbers and you take a look at where he was at as a sophomore back in the spring of 2022, he was running the 100-meter in around the 10.9, 11.1 range, which is solid for an underclassman. But he has stayed at it. He has worked really hard. And he wrapped up his senior year, his final year on the track, running, I believe it was a 10.64 in the 100. So that's a testament to the work that he has put in to get faster and just really improve his athletic profile. It was already a really good one, but when you've got a guy running in 10.6 and he has yet to sniff a college strength and conditioning program where, quite frankly, athletically, you expect him to only get better from this point on, it's very, very intriguing. And it probably adds to what he could bring to the safety room. You know, when you add that speed to your depth chart, it opens the door for a player like Lane to be utilized in different ways. So for me, he's definitely one of the more underrated prospects in this class. It was early on where, Lane, he was ranked among the top of the nation. He fell a little bit in the rankings, but I think just there's so much to him as a player. He's got the cover ability. He's got good ball skills. Now we know that he has the speed. That's verified at this point. So athletically, he is where he needs to be. And again, I still think it's only up from him on that spectrum from this point on. As a tackler, he's a hard hitter. Sometimes, the technique and the discipline there, it's not where it needs to be. So that's something he's going to work on. But there is so much to like with DeJuan Lane and what he could potentially provide for Penn State at the next level. One of my favorite gets for Penn State in the 2024 class. He got swept under the rug a little bit by some, higher profile additions, or maybe guys who garner a little bit more of conversation because they were more prominent in the way they handled their recruitments. Lane didn't talk a whole lot, didn't bring a whole lot of attention to himself throughout his process. It was really all about ball, finding the best spot for him at the next level. He settled on Penn State, and Nittany Lions are very happy to welcome him to campus.
Speaking with somebody on that Penn State football staff about Lane and kind of what he's going to bring here, they list him at 6'2", 205 pounds back on signing day in December. But the comparison that I heard was KJ Winston, and I found that quite interesting because everybody in that facility, and I heard this comparison in December. So KJ Winston had already logged that first full season as a starting safety for this team. He had already lived up to those expectations. And now I think people who pay attention to this Penn State football team know that he can potentially be a first-round caliber talent next year in the NFL. So there's a lot of respect for that name, KJ Winston, in the Lash building. So to hear that applied to DeJuan Lane, I think that stood out. Something that really stands out is the ability to bring that pop. And you're going to hear the hits. Maybe not as much as you would in a high school field situation, but this is somebody who is going to hit you hard in the open field. There's no question about, does he have the demeanor, the physicality to play safety? Those are all answered. And so I think DeJuan Lane walks into a situation here where, yes, KJ Winston and Jalen Reed and Enzeki Wheatley are the clear lead dogs of that pack. But I think we could be looking at a situation in the 2025 safety room, Tyler, where very much like the 2024 cornerback room, it's a bit of a reset at the top, where you could have all three guys, if they go out and deliver, find greener pastures at the next level, and that makes sense for them. So King Mack out of the equation, Lamont Payne into the equation at corner after spending his first year at cornerback. Tyrese Mills is an interesting kind of figure within this defense. Is he a safety? Is he a linebacker? He's a senior. So I think ultimately you're seeing him show up. And Babu Torre, who has the head start and I thought really looked pretty well composed at that position with Team White in the blue-white game. This could be a really good tandem. Babu Torre and DeJuan Lane, and it might be a tandem that matters a lot to the team come 2025. So those are the three guys. There's two left by our count, right? So that you've got 23 total freshmen that will be, in the nest come next week when they get back to classes and get on the field and do whatever they're doing. These guys will be all involved. So we're waiting on two more, and they're both out of the same program. Tyler, talk us through with the Emo Tip pair on both sides of the ball. Kenny Wosley, who we've heard could be a potential captain type figure and presence, and then Ty Sear Denmark, coming off a big 33 MVP performance at wide receiver. We've discussed his potential to maybe immediately enter the conversation at slot come his arrival. And if he has a strong preseason camp, a lot to do between now and then. They've got to get to campus. And what do you make of those two and their timeline?
Well, if you're a Penn State fan, you should be excited about Tyser Denmark even beyond what he accomplished in the Big 33. But if you watched that and tuned in and just watched the way he was running those routes and the way he was making plays, it adds to the intrigue. And it's just, I keep coming back to the fact that me and you have discussed, which prospect from this group of summer enrollees has the best chance to at least potentially make an impact in 2024. I just keep coming back to Denmark. He's so smooth. There's a refinery to his game, I feel, that isn't necessarily typical of a senior in high school at wide receiver. His routes are crisp. His hands are good. He could do some things for you vertically as well. I think that's an underrated element of his game. So I'm really excited to see what he can accomplish at the next level. I mean, is it possible that he arrives on campus, gets the ball rolling, when he arrives later in the month and, really competes as a true freshman for a spot? It's not really a crazy thought to me. Maybe that's just me being really, really high on Denmark and his skill set, but I think the people at Penn State, those who I've talked to about Tyser Denmark, there's just a lot of optimism. And if it's not this year necessarily, it's going to be at some point because Penn State thinks this guy has it. And the same goes for Wosley, I think, in the secondary, another guy who's going to arrive a little bit later in June. Imitep, they graduate a little bit later than a lot of places. That's a theme in PA in general. But Imitep, they finish up a little bit later than, some of the guys who've been able to get to campus early. So they'll be on campus a little bit later in June. And I think once Wosley arrives in town, Penn State fans are going to be able to see the intangibles that he brings to the table. You mentioned it, potential future captain material. He's one of those guys who, when you watch him move around on the field, not just mean as a cornerback in coverage or in run support, I mean, the way he works on the sidelines, the way he communicates with his teammates. He's just one of those guys who has that it factor. He's one of those guys, he knows what he's doing out there, right? He knows the game really well, and he knows how to pass that knowledge and advice along to his teammates if he feels that's needed. He's just one of those guys who has that presence. He's just one of those guys you want in your locker room. That was a really big part of the appeal in Penn State's pursuing. He's a hell of a football player as well. Really strong in coverage. He has that alpha presence on the field. You sense that every time he takes the field, whether it be in a 7-on-7 setting with the pads on. Just one of those guys, you get that aura from him that he's an alpha dog and he's going to do whatever he has to take to make a play. So those two, Imitep's a really good program in Philly. Penn State has two of its best, and I think they both have the chance to be real players for the Nittany Lions at the next level.
And those two, I mean, if they got to try to sharpen each other up, they got all they need in each other, right? I mean, before they get to campus, these are guys that we have seen show up and really look the part in the 7-on-7 team at Penn State. And with the golf carts of Penn State coaches, looking at them, really just the competitive juices were flowing for both of them. And you could see, why they would be pushing each other right now through some workout sessions. And we've seen some video of those workouts from Tyseer Denmark. They're impressive. I think what I wonder regarding Denmark, and because I'm with you on everything you said, the smooth factor, the footwork, just someone who looks like they can be slotted into a variety of offenses and find a comfort level. But for me, will he be able to get that separation from, solid slot cornerbacks in year one? Or is that something that's going to require some training in the speed department and just getting more explosive, which is going to come with time at Penn State? That's a question that they'll probably have a pretty solid answer on by the end of August, at least where he is right now, because where are you going to find a better group of cornerbacks than what Penn State is going to put on the field during this preseason camp? I mean, West Virginia, that's right now maybe their Achilles heel. We're hearing about Rodney Gallagher, former wide receiver target for Penn State, maybe playing slot cornerback for them in the season opener. Meanwhile, you're going to have to deal with guys like Jalen Reed or in that line type role, and then you've got Cam Miller from the cornerback position, AJ Harris coming in to the slot as well. These are guys that are going to be high-level slot coverage players all season long in the Big Ten. So if Tyseer Denmark is able to find success against the likes of them in August during his first preseason camp, then that's going to be a huge testament to where he's at. And if he doesn't, then maybe you can go back to what we said before. You're going to see a lot of Liam Clifford. You're going to see a lot of Caden Saunders. Anthony Ivey could be someone who emerges and gets some work in that slot. But Tyseer Denmark is a fascinating one to watch moving forward. And we'll keep tabs when they do get to campus, when we get confirmation that they are making that move to campus. We'll let you know here on the podcast. We'll write about it over at lions247.com. Perhaps we'll have one or both of them on the podcast as well to get to know them a little bit more. Let's turn our attention over to the official visits, because they now take center stage for the next 4 weekends, I believe, Tyler Calvaruso. So not only are we going to have that intertwined with our camp coverage, which, again, we'll be out there this Sunday, and we'll be out there next Friday for the first of 3 7-on-7 tournaments and big man challenges. A lot coming your way. But along each step of that, we're going to have eyes on these golf carts, which are going to feature position coaches and mom and dad and a prospect with a lanyard on. And those guys are going to be official visitors. And there are going to be a ton of them on this campus this weekend, Tyler. And we have a lot of directions we can go in with this group, but I figured we'd start with somebody that I know you're feeling pretty confident about where Penn State stands, and also really important about prioritizing an in-state prospect, Lex Cyrus, at a priority position, wide receiver.
He just continues to strike me as the kind of guy Penn State usually gets. And Penn State's just felt like a natural place for him, really, since it offered last summer. It was the whiteout camp where Cyrus really kind of popped onto the radar for Marcus Higgins as a potential priority target. Those two worked really closely throughout the camp. During the individual portion of the camp, there were multiple times where Higgins pulled Cyrus to the side, gave him some individual coaching. And you could see that Cyrus took that coaching and applied it to what he was doing during one-on-ones, because he won the majority of his reps that day. And he tested very, very well, which, if you have any sort of familiarity with Lex Cyrus's recruitment, that comes as absolutely no surprise given what he has accomplished on the track throughout his high school career. When we talk about fast, Lex Cyrus is fast, and you can just see it whenever you get eyes on him in person. I got the chance to see him in Under Armour, New Jersey, and man, I mean, that kid is a straight burner. He's got burst off the line. His straight line speed is magnificent. There's just so much that he has going for him in the speed element. And Penn State has prioritized him for an extended period of time now, and it's hoping to get this one across the finish line. When you evaluate every aspect of Cyrus's recruitment and Penn State's involvement, and some of the other programs involved as well, maybe this is one that winds up getting done over the weekend, just given how often he has been around, the level of comfort and familiarity he has with the staff. South Carolina, though, is on the docket for Cyrus next weekend. Gamecocks are set to get an official visit. Right now, I think that's a visit that he does wind up taking. Would it surprise me if Penn State's able to close on him this weekend? No, frankly, it wouldn't, for the aforementioned reasons. But I think that whether or not Cyrus winds up making it to South Carolina the following weekend, I like Penn State as the program to beat for him heading into this weekend. I think everything is just really aligning quite nicely for Penn State, and I think it is going to be able to get this one done. It's kind of feels like a matter of timeline at this point, but again, I just think the Nittany Lions have done all the right things here, and it's one of those situations where it just makes too much sense to ignore.
Cyrus out of Susquehanna Township High School is the number 33 overall wide receiver in 24/7 sports rankings, number 7 in the state of Pennsylvania, 4-star prospect. Let's go over to New Jersey because there's a couple of compelling recruits making their way to campus from the Garden State this weekend. And we know that there's always going to be some New Jersey flavor to Penn State recruiting. Right now, you look at this current class, they've got a couple guys in the class already from New Jersey. So what do you think about the odds of that group growing, and talk about the two who are going to be showing up to campus this weekend?
I think these are two pretty crucial visitors coming up here for Penn State, and Quincy Porter, who's a top 100 wide receiver from Bergen Catholic, and Malachi Goodman, who's a top 24/7 offensive lineman from Paramus Catholic. I just think both have been top of the board targets for Penn State so long. These are pivotal visits coming up. Starting with Porter, who has been one of the more interesting prospects to track throughout the cycle, in the sense that he doesn't talk a whole lot, so he's kind of difficult to get a read on from our perspective, but he didn't visit Penn State during the winter. So at that point, you kind of wondered what he was thinking about the Nittany Lions. But he gets back to campus during the spring in late March, on March 29th for spring practice. That was something Penn State staff pushed really, really hard to make happen, and it paid off in the end because things headed in the right direction and, eventually led to this official visit getting locked in. I don't want to overstate this. Quincy Porter is one of those guys who many people inside of Lash feel is an early impact guy. He can come in right off the bat and make a legitimate impact at wide receiver for Penn State. And that's been a big part of the pitch to Quincy Porter, that, hey, look, you come here, you're going to get the chance to be one of our main guys from day one. You have that kind of talent. We believe in you at that level. That has been a big, big part of Penn State's selling point to Porter. And, it's been well received by Porter and his family, seemingly. This weekend, again, I want to go back to the word crucial, but it is. The fact of the matter is Penn State's still fighting the likes of Michigan and Ohio State, but it's there at this point. They have a fighter's chance in this recruitment. They have a chance to make a big-time impact on Porter this weekend. Same goes for Goodman. Goodman got his offer. He popped into the picture a little bit later for Penn State than Porter. Porter's been offered since winter of 2022, so he's been on this wide receiver board for the staff for a long time now. Goodman didn't get his offer until October, but once that offer came in, he locked in a visit pretty quickly. He was on campus the following month for Penn State's clash with Michigan, and really ever since that point, he's been a pretty clear priority for the staff, and he has been made to feel as such. He has developed a good relationship with Phil Trotwine. It's a regional option for him, so there's appeal in that sense. It's a little bit closer to home than the rest of his suitors, so that is something that you need to keep in mind in this recruitment. Alabama's done a good job with Goodman. Auburn has been a surger for Goodman. Visited for the first time during the spring, locked in an official visit, was back in town earlier in May. Things went really well there. So Bama and Auburn, you need to keep an eye on. You also need to keep an eye on Georgia. They're going to get Goodman on campus next weekend for an official visit. That Georgia offensive line board is really jam-packed, so we're going to have to see what comes of that in the sense of where Goodman falls in the pecking order. But the Bulldogs have done a really, really good job recruiting him. And USC is going to get an official visit to close out the month. Goodman could carry things on into the fall, depending on how these official visits go. He hasn't committed to a hard timeline for a decision, so we're going to have to see what comes about on that front. But this is another situation with the prospect from New Jersey, a talented prospect from New Jersey, and everyone knows this. Whenever a top-end talent in the Garden State presents itself, Penn State is going to take its crack. That's what it's doing with Porter. That's what it's doing with Goodman, and both are going to be in town this weekend. So big-time opportunities there.
By the way, Phil Trotwine, an eventual two-time team captain for national champion Florida Gators, was a former offensive lineman from that state in New Jersey. I want to go to Porter really quickly because you said a lot of nice things about him, and I know that our board thinks he's the next coming of Megatron potentially, or whatever you want to apply, whoever the hot receiver is. And I can see a lot of that, and I can understand the excitement, and I get why he's knocking on the door of being a top 10 wide receiver. And when we get through spring camp circuit, I'm going to be really curious to see where he is in our rankings. Right now, he's number 90 overall, listed at 6'3", 190 pounds. The production, the explosiveness, it's there. Would you qualify him in terms of realistic wide receivers for Penn State in the class? Would he be the number one guy for you?
Yes. I think that's the feeling internally as well. I think there are a lot of really good receivers that Penn State is in on this cycle, right? We already touched on Cyrus. Jeff Exner is going to be on campus next weekend. And there are a bunch of other receivers. I mean, even this weekend, Corey Sims from Missouri is a 4-star guy that Penn State really likes. So you're seeing a lot of high-quality wideouts that Penn State is involved in. And they're not just involved with these guys. These guys have Penn State high on their list. So there's a legitimate chance. But if all was equal, I think Porter's that top guy. Based on the conversations I've had, it has not been kept quiet how much they love him in his game.
Something you referenced in your preview of this weekend over at Lions247.com. And right now, by the way, I'm going to mention it before I don't, 60% off VIP access right now for a limited time as we prepare for our big summer camp coverage and official visit weekend coverage. We're doing this as kind of a kickoff celebration and get everybody on board. So if you're not on board with us already for VIP coverage, a lot of this stuff is going to be buried behind VIP walls because on-field camp stuff and all the conversations coming out of these official visits, some of the projection stuff. So stay tuned, and I'd highly recommend, though, hopping on that VIP opportunity. Tyler, but something you wrote in that VIP piece was that it's Terry Smith's time to shine, the cornerbacks coach here at Penn State. He's assembled another really impressive group. Expectations are high again for that position room in 2024, despite losing 3 really top-level talents from the 2023 squad. What do you make of what he has in front of him? Because I know it's going to be an exciting opportunity, but it's going to be a busy one for him as well.
Yeah, it is. This is a big weekend. It's going to be a busy weekend for him with 2 of his top targets coming to town. You know, Brandon Finney from McDonough is probably the top name on Penn State's cornerback board at this point in the cycle. He's right up there with Jameer Joseph from Jersey, who's going to be on campus a little bit later in the month. Finney's speed is legit. Smith has been prioritizing him since the winter. You know, you've got that McDonough pipeline, and Penn State's success at McDonough has been well documented. I think in this specific recruitment, this is something Finney has mentioned to me as well. You know, he kind of blew up a little bit later in his process. I mentioned that Penn State offered in December. A lot of his other big offers that, you know, came in the winter and the schools that he's going to officially visit now, they offered in either January or February. And, you know, in Michigan's sake, you know, a program that has jumped in late and is garnering his interest, that offer didn't come all that long ago and earlier in the spring. So a lot of this and a lot of his top suitors are still new to him. I think he has more familiarity with Penn State than probably any other program involved with him at this point. I mentioned the McDonough pipeline. That's something Finney has specifically brought up to me as a factor in his interest. He really likes Smith. Really appreciates the plan for the development that has been laid out for him. So Penn State has that going in its favor. I think Penn State's going to really push to try and get him locked down this weekend, but I do think he's going to continue to take the rest of his visits. You know, South Carolina's in the mix, Oregon's in the mix, Georgia's in the mix. Fact of the matter is, he really just has more to learn about these schools. You know, he's kind of in fact-finding and information-collecting mode at this point. With Penn State, it's a little bit different of an approach for him because he told me, I mean, he's been around a bunch. He's kind of seen everything that he needs to see from the Nittany Lions. It's more about the place at this point. It's about State College. It's about the campus. It's about how he fits in. So through his eyes, that's going to be his priority during this visit. How do I fit in Happy Valley? And, you know, if he determines State College is the place for him, I think Penn State has a really good chance to get this one done at some point. Albeit maybe not this weekend, but at some point when it comes time for him to sit down and make that call, I think Penn State's going to be in a good spot. With Littleton, another guy that Penn State got in on earlier than most compared to other Power 4 suitors. This was one that Terry Smith, he issued an offer early in the winter. I believe it was in January. And when you look at the way Littleton's recruitment has transpired since, he's gotten some big-time offers. You know, he's going to visit Clemson. He's going to visit Alabama. He's going to visit Iowa. There are a bunch of other high-quality programs involved with him. But he has always held the respect for Smith offering him and taking a chance on him earlier than most. And I think, going back, I've been in conversation with Littleton throughout this month about his official visit schedule and getting that finalized. He had Penn State targeted for that first weekend, really before any other visit. Now, it wasn't locked in until just yesterday because he was working on formulating his schedule and when he get out to these other programs. But when he visited in the spring, he knew that he wanted to get back for an official, and he worked to make that happen. And he has emerged, as I mentioned, Finney and Joseph as top targets. Littleton is very much in that conversation as well now. So you're probably going to see Terry Smith pushing for both this weekend. This is another scenario where I expect the recruit to go take the rest of his visit. So I think Littleton will get out and see these other programs. So he's probably a little bit further off in his decision-making process. But again, Penn State has a chance to give him something to really think about this weekend as he goes throughout the rest of his schedule. And I like where the Nittany Lions are at right now. I think there's a lot of intrigue from Littleton's end.
I know it's also going to be a pretty heavy itinerary this weekend for Deion Barnes, with the defensive line coach, year number 2. We discussed it, a pretty impressive body of work put together in his first recruiting cycle as a position coach. And let's remember, he wasn't promoted to that spot until right before spring ball last year. So this really feels like his first full cycle where he's going to have more opportunities to grow, plant some seeds, grow some roots with recruits. And a big opportunity here, just like we talked about last year, is trying to match that relationship and get that better, look into his personality as your position coach. The official visit is going to be able to do that. What does he stand to gain if things go successfully this weekend?
3 really high board targets for him traveling to campus this weekend. Got to start with Max Granville, the top 24/7 edge rusher from Texas. He's an out-of-region guy, but Penn State has given itself a real chance here. There are a couple of different reasons for that. His father, Billy, who played in the NFL, he has some Northeast roots. So this isn't a situation where it's an out-of-region guy who has zero prior familiarity with the region. He has a little bit of a sense of what it's like in the Northeast, and he's been able to pass that down to his son. Granville took a multi-day visit to Penn State during the spring. The staff has been down to his high school to see him multiple times. It was Barnes and company during the winter, and then it was Tom Allen earlier in the spring to give Granville kind of a better idea of how he would fit in the defense, how he would be used coming off the edge. All of that has seemed to go over really well. My thing with Granville, and I've said this in I think every article that I've ever written about Granville, is Oklahoma exists in this recruitment. It has existed since he was an underclassman, and the Sooners are the crystal ball favorite for a reason. It's a regional option for him. The relationships that Granville and his family have with the staff in Norman, they're very real, and they've got longevity, and a lot of trust has been built over that extended period of time. So I continue to get the sense that while Penn State has a very real chance to get Granville in town this weekend and kind of set the tone for his official visit schedule, I think he's going to get to Oklahoma at the end of the month. He has it scheduled for June 21st through the 23rd. He's going to get to Norman, and it's going to be one of those situations where we've seen this work out in Penn State's favor as well. He's going to get back to a place where he's really familiar with it, and it kind of all comes together in that program's favor. I think Penn State does have a real chance here. I just can't shake the feeling that Oklahoma is the one to beat and will eventually win out.
Can I jump in real quick on Granville? Because, again, one of the premier edge rushers, the guy's traveled a long way for this trip. You've noted a few times on the podcast, on the website, that Tom Allen has played a specifically integral role in the recruitment with Penn State. And we know that as defensive coordinator and linebackers coach, he's going to be able to float around a little bit and what he's getting involved in on the recruiting trail. And when it comes to this relationship, how has that resonated based on what you've gathered? Because we're still just picking up little intel here and there about what Tom Allen is doing as a recruiter. We got a pretty good image of maybe what Manny Diaz was by the end of his 2 years, but we're early stages yet with Allen.
Early feedback has been pretty positive. And I think if you look back at who Allen was as a recruiter, as a head coach at Indiana, and predating that, he's one of those guys who he likes to take a presence on the trail. He likes to be as actively involved in recruiting as he can be. Some coordinators, they lurk in the shadows a little bit more. And then when it comes time to get these guys on campus for official visits, they take on more of a prominent role and become kind of, they step into that closer's role. Allen is a guy, at least from my sense, and I'm talking to people, who if you're a priority target, he's going to assert himself in your recruitment. And he's going to make it clear that you are wanted. I know this isn't related to the conversation we're in right now regarding this official visit weekend, but Penn State just offered a 2026 safety who's a 5-star, and I was catching up with him earlier today, and he told me, Allen made it clear to him, look, I'm going to be very involved in your recruitment. And that's right off the bat with an underclassman prospect who is just getting an offer from Penn State. So how do you think that shapes up with guys like Granville, who have been high on Penn State's board for an extended period of time? Even more of his presence is felt in a situation like that. Him going down to Texas and getting that FaceTime with Granville was really, really valuable. You see coordinators out on the road recruiting all the time, right? That's nothing new. That happens with every coordinator who coaches in the country. But what those coordinators do when they're on the road and how much of an impact they make, that's what you need to take away. And I think so far, so good with Allen in that regard. Now, like anything else, you're going to have to see how he helps Penn State to close on some of these top targets because it's a results-oriented business. You got to go out and get guys. But I think Allen, his personality has resonated with recruits, Granville being one of them. And I think his overall presence has been a positive for Penn State on the trail. And maybe you could see that as soon as this cycle with official visits starting. I think maybe next year you'll see more of an impact as he knows some of these guys a little bit better and has longer standing relationships with them. He had to play catch up with a bunch of these guys. But I got to say, he's done a pretty good job of doing so.
I don't know if I interrupted the overall defensive line arc, but I was just curious about Allen generally because I know Granville also has, he's been out to see him and we've heard this and that. So just wanted to throw that your way while we were on the subject. I think we haven't really discussed Tom Allen as a recruiter at all in quite some time. So appreciate you for entertaining me there. Anything else to add on the other two defensive line prospects that are going to be here?
Definitely. Regionally, we just start with the out-of-region prospect. We might as well go back to the regional prospect. Yvonne Camaggio on the defensive line is interior target for Penn State, big-time target. There's a reason they're bringing him in for this first official visit weekend. It kind of goes back to the conversation we've had about official visit structure dating back to earlier in the spring. Every guy is visiting on a certain weekend for a reason. In some cases, like Jadon Blair, for example, the last weekend of June just happened to fit his schedule better than, some other weekends when it comes to getting to Penn State. But these first 2 weekends of official visits for Penn State, it is loaded up with priority targets, and that was not a coincidence or done accidentally. That was done on purpose. And when you look at the weekend of June 14th through the 16th, there are certain guys visiting that weekend, legacy prospects who are going to be around with the rest of the commits, also done on purpose. So when you see Camaggio visiting this weekend, it, one, tells you where he is on the board, and two, how badly Penn State might want to get this one done, depending on how that visit plays out. Because he's a regional prospect. He's a talented regional prospect at that. I got eyes on him at Under Armour Baltimore, and he was doing a lot of good things during drill work and during one-on-one. So I saw the intrigue from Penn State's side with my own eyes, and he's going to be a good player at the next level, I think. When you look at the competition for Camaggio, Duke's going to get an official visit. West Virginia's going to get an official visit. Virginia Tech is going to get an official visit. To be completely honest with you, Penn State beats those schools a lot on the recruiting trail for guys that they truly want. That's just kind of the reality of it, right? That's not to talk down on those programs. That's just the reality of recruiting. I'm
just thinking of two of James's old buddies running the shows at those schools in Brent Pry and Manny Diaz, and them having to take some of those losses on the chin. But you're right; they know that what's in play right now with Penn State versus what's in play for those programs.
Yeah, and those guys have had some good wins on the trail in their own right, so kudos to them for that. But in this specific recruitment, I think Penn State's in the best spot. I think this is one that it could get done. Again, maybe not this weekend if he wants to go through the entirety of his slate and examine all of his options. That's perfectly fine. But this is one that Penn State can get done at some point during the offseason potentially. And then with Cedric Works, another guy who has maybe flown under the radar a little bit. He visited in the fall, and he didn't leave with an offer that day. And when that happened, I kind of wonder if that was going to be the last we ever discussed Cedric Works, but he has blossomed into a top 100 prospect and a top of the board target at that. I think Penn State will be keeping a really close eye on him this weekend, seeing what comes of his visit. And if everything checks out, Florida is involved with Works and Kentucky is involved with Works. Again, it just feels like a winnable recruitment for Penn State. And one aspect with Works is that, when I mentioned, checking him out, getting a feel for him, making sure everything goes well, It's been mentioned that he had some hurdles to clear academically. I think he has gotten there, or at least is close to getting there. But that's another aspect of this visit. But again, I feel like this is one that Penn State can get done. And if they do, Deion Barnes is going to have a really good edge rusher on his hands.
I'm pretty interested in the linebacker making the trip up from Florida. Ty Jackson from Seminole Ridge High School, top 20 player at his position, top 200 overall prospect. And I saw that you noted in the preview that Georgia and Florida State are firmly in that mix. And I'm thinking about a guy from that region. Hey, great to get him on campus, but this seems like one where they'd probably have to hit something to the level of a Grand Slam home run with him and his family to really get him to circle back to Penn State at the end of this process.
Yeah, I think Penn State's playing from behind here. It might not be by as much as meets the eye, though. There's been optimism internally expressed about Penn State's chances with Jackson. That dates back to the winter. Again, this is kind of another recruitment where I do think he's going to stay a little bit more regionally and play his college ball down south when it's all said and done. But this isn't some visit where, he's just making it because Penn State's recruited him really hard and they've done a good job with him and he wants to give them the courtesy of getting an official visit. No. Penn State's going to get a real look from Jackson on this official visit. He fits what Tom Allen wants to do with his linebackers, quite frankly, perfectly, in my opinion. If you go turn on his film, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about in terms of athleticism and the way he plays linebacker. So he's a priority target for Penn State. I think he's going to be very open and receptive to what Penn State has to pitch him this weekend. And really, we're just going to have to see where the bar lands for Jackson coming out of this weekend. Penn State could set it pretty high, but he's going to go on and take these other visits. So how do the Nittany Lions hold up throughout the totality of his official visit schedule? That's going to be the big thing for me. If Penn State makes a really good first impression, it's going to give them a lot to think about. But how do they weather and withstand the other programs that are a little bit closer to home and programs he might be higher on right now? I think that's the biggest storyline to follow with Ty Jackson.
Any other storylines you want to toss into this episode of the podcast? I know we'll have a ton to work through over at the site coming out of the weekend. We'll get you back on for a podcast early next week to kind of sort through what happened before we look ahead at the following weekend, which will bring plenty more visitors. Anything else that we need to mention here on this particular episode?
I mentioned Corey Sims a little bit earlier. One guy who we've kind of, I don't want to say left him out because we obviously haven't left him out, but we haven't talked about him as much as some of the other visitors, is Antonio Branch from Florida. Now, he was going to visit for the blue-white game in April. He wasn't able to, and as I said, it was because he had his grandmother's birthday that day, and he wasn't able to make the trip. But he has remained very interested in Penn State. And I think a lot of the conversation at safety, so much of it has centered around Jadon Blair and Kanoa Winston. Branch is a guy who's flown under the radar. He hasn't been talked about, but he really likes the Nittany Lions, and it seems like Anthony Poindexter likes him too. So that could be something to keep a really close eye on throughout this weekend. Might not be, not the most hotly talked about prospect visiting this weekend, not the most hotly talked about prospect on the board at safety, but one Penn State likes him, and they're bringing him in. They're going to see how things go. I think Branch is traveling to State College with a pretty high level of interest in the program.
Good stuff, Tyler Calvaruso. If you've been watching on YouTube, don't worry. I'm not choking up along. I'm just working my way through a bit of a head cold. I think I'm in the final day of it here, I hope. But thank you for doing a lot of the heavy lifting during that segment as I try to keep my voice together here. Good stuff from you. As always, I look forward to your coverage. Again, 60% off gets you in the door right now for everything VIP at lions247.com. A big chunk of that this summer is going to be Tyler's commentary and reporting. And, of course, Brian Doan and all of our network employees who cover recruiting are going to do a fantastic job filling in a lot of the blanks right now in terms of what's going to happen in those next few months, because we're going to see this class fill up. We're going to see new names emerge. We're going to see familiar names go elsewhere. Stay tuned. It's going to be fun to follow. We'll get you back on next week, probably multiple times for what's brewing. Talk to you soon, Tyler.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
Great stuff from our colleague, Tyler Calvaruso. As always, check him out over at lions247.com. Before him, we had Donnie Harbor on the show. Look forward to welcoming him to campus in just a matter of days now. We'll be seeing him around in person next time. For now, stepping aside, I am Tyler Donahue. We're back on the field for camp coverage Sunday. Follow for live updates over at lions247.com. And by the time we even get to that camp on Sunday afternoon, you're going to see a lot of updates coming out of official visit weekend. So head over to lions247.com. We'll fill you in on the details over at Lions247 Podcast next week. For now, fun episode, a lot to go through. We'll be back with you soon. Take care.